Jesper, thank you so much for joining us at Harvard Business School.
Thank you for having me.
You are the CEO of Ingka Group, which runs most of IKEA's retail operations in dozens of countries like the United States, India, China, and France. You are known for your unwavering belief that a sustainable business can be profitable while also delivering good for society.
We are well ahead today in the climate transformation in IKEA. And much unlike the myth that we are being told that it's costly, it comes with a premium, people are not interested and so on, we found the opposite. So there are at least 3 reasons for us why this is incredibly important, and also for me as a leader. So to start with the ethical side of it, we are confronted by the biggest crisis of humankind ever, and therefore we think it's our task to make sure we don't hand the problem to the next generation. Secondly, from a brand perspective, almost 70% of IKEA's customers today in all markets are deeply concerned with climate change and see it as humanity's biggest problem as well. So for us to ignore that from a brand perspective would not be a good idea. Now, interesting enough, only 6% of our consumers are prepared to pay for the transformation. So it tells us not that people are not interested, but it's simply they don't have the money. Therefore, we took on to ourselves to engage in this transformation. Today, we are well underway. We are 24% absolute carbon reduction, and the business is doing fine.
You've successfully demonstrated that sustainability and profitability can go hand in hand, given that you've been reducing the company's carbon footprint by 24% while growing its revenue by 31% since 2016.
The message that we want to try to get across is that it's good business to be a good business. It started back in the 90s when I began my career at IKEA. At that time, we were expanding our sourcing and purchasing to Asia. And the big topic was, do we apply the values that are important for us at IKEA on our suppliers into the places we go? Or, do we need to abide to the cultures and the principles of that place? We decided to develop a code of conduct and make sure that we put the strictest demands on both environmental aspects and people aspects. And in the beginning of that, I know there was a lot of fear that would drive cost into the system, only to find out across the implementation that it was the opposite. So for us, it became, reduction of environmental costs equals, of course, environmental good. Motivational aspects to co-workers in our industries had just economic benefits, nothing else. Since then, we have been progressing with strategies, we have been learning. In particular, I would say in the area of climate, it's as late as the 2010s when we really had the insights that this will not only impact the world, but also the financial success of IKEA. So we see the correlation between climate smart, resource smart, and cost smart.
So IKEA touches hundreds of millions of customers every year in your big box stores, in your smaller stores, and increasingly online. Do you think customers care about climate?
Basically, we know today from the GlobeScan research that we do it every second year, so we also have some data going back in time. We see that it's a spike and increase from people all over. The difference between market to market is not that big, actually. The difference sits in age groups. So if you go down to our customers in the 30s and then to the 20s, it's up in above the 80s of percentage of people who actually care. So we know that people care for that. We also know that people care for providing solutions, because for a lot of people it's a problem that seems ungraspable for many, and it's hard for people to understand how can I contribute. So we try to fill that gap.
When it comes to narrative change, what else needs to happen? I mean, you're already doing it with Action Speaks, but what else can be done? If you had a magic wand, what would you do?
We need to change the narrative around the myth that climate adaptation will cost. It is a myth from the point that, first of all, if that would be the pathway, then only rich people would afford it, and then we will not have impact anyways. So I think, first of all, we have all the solutions that we need. It's all actually about implementation. Innovation will come on top of that. So I think one of the most important things with the narrative is not only that it's possible, it's happening as we speak.
You've recently launched Pre-Owned, IKEA Pre-Owned,
yes,
which I think falls into your circularity efforts. Is that fair to say? Why did you decide to do it, and why all the excitement about it externally?
I am a little bit surprised about the attention it is drawn. We're only doing 2 pilots at the moment, and I'm being haunted by people, customers, co-workers, and media who wants us to go faster. So maybe we need to listen and speed up a little bit. It's an interesting thing for us. The home furnishing sector, we didn't used to consider the second-hand market as part of the market. And today we do. And normally it's about, in monetary terms, it would be about 10% of the market in any given market. From a quantity, a piece perspective is probably a third, because of course it's the lowest price is second-hand. So it's actually a huge part of the market. So it started with us saying, we can't ignore a third of the market. We have to understand it. We have to learn more. We have to understand both how we can contribute, but also to see if there's a business reason for us to be engaged. We've been working in different modes. We're buying back furniture from our customers and so forth. But the biggest impact really comes from people selling and buying pre-owned furniture on platforms out there. Now, until recently, we were not sure if we could add a value to that, because these platforms are doing a great job. And now what we're piloting is an application with IKEA, which actually, in practical terms, I think it adds value both for the buyer and the seller. So the seller gets an opportunity to, through AI, get pictures, measurements, assembly guides connected with the cell, which is hard for anybody else to do. It even allows you to actually get access to recommendation of prices. The buyer gets all of that, but also access to IKEA's spare part library, and can order free of charge. It can be then an enabler. And then we're testing right now. If you don't want to cash in as a seller, you can go to IKEA and we will add 15% to the receipt if you come to IKEA. So it's also a commercial angle to it. And right now it's being piloted into markets.
I wanted to dig into circularity a little bit, because you've been doing so much. Can you start by explaining what is circularity and why should CEOs pay attention to it?
So I think circularity it's a fascinating topic. It's a bit younger sibling in the climate strategy group. And renewable energy is something that is established today. So we have, since long in IKEA, for instance, we've been investing 4.1 billion euros so far in renewable energy. We're actually beyond our own needs. We are running at 160% of our own needs. We're trying to connect it dot to dot also across the value chain and so on. So it went from an idea to an investment to make us climate friendly to actually become a really good business. So we are a utility company today. If you look at circularity, it's slightly less mature, but it's building on the notion that in the consumption models of the future, we need to find ways to access raw material. Today, it's about 40% of IKEA's total footprint is raw material. So in order to resolve the economics of the future, we need to find new ways where virgin material will not be the only source of material. It's not going to be enough. So both from a carbon perspective and an economical perspective, circularity will be important. The truth is that I would almost say for good reasons, a lot of incineration of materials, of trash is happening today to avoid landfill. So it was set up with schemes to subsidize to avoid landfills. So that was good at a certain time. It can also be a producer of energy. But in a new world, we actually need that material to make new furniture, new products. So therefore, I think the next big business opportunity, not only for IKEA, is actually companies setting up circular flows, which needs to happen together with the support of governments, like, for instance, IKEA's mattress recycling in Netherlands.
And what happened with that? How did the government play a role in your mattress recycling?
Well, I think it's one of the best examples that I know of a collaboration between government and company. So we couldn't have done it without the government. That was very foresighting a change. So they changed the legislation on incineration to basically ban incineration of mattresses. And they also instigated collection points where you need to drop your own mattress when you're done with it. That provided enough substance for us to set up the first test of, if you like, a reversed factory that takes in mattresses and basically separates it into at least 3 material groups, the foam, the polyester, and the metal, and sends it back into the value chain for new products. Interesting enough, so if you look at IKEA's scope 3 from a product perspective, the bulky stuff like sofas and mattresses is a big part of it. So I think mattresses is maybe as much as 10% of our carbon footprint from a product angle. So it's an important component for us to basically resolve. In Netherlands alone, there is about 17 million people, and a mattress lasts for 10 years, so 1.7 million mattresses per year used to go to incineration. Now all of them are picked up by IKEA. So we are not only taking care of our own share, we have capacity for all mattresses in Netherlands. And basically, it's not an amazing business, but it's good enough. We make some profit, and it helps us with alternative sourcing of materials for the new products.
Do you think it's scalable?
We are right now scaling it. We're opening in France. We have recently opened in UK. We're opening in Scandinavia, the first markets. And we are negotiating with different countries in order to set up the requirements to make it happen. And people are fascinated. They like it. It's a good contribution to the economy, and obviously it helps everybody from a climate perspective. I just came back from Paris, where we opened the biggest investment in a long time in IKEA in France, Place d'Italie in the city center of Paris. And it's being led by a woman who's 26 years old. And honestly, after meeting her, I think she could be my manager. I would be fine, you know. So again, age is of course important and experiences, but willingness and attitude is even more important.
Now, a business leader for a publicly held company may not have the freedom to do what you're doing. What advice would you have for them?
I think the importance still is there that you said all companies need to progress into the future and think about transformation. So there's no industry that will not be impacted by the climate transformation, just like the digital transformation, if you like. And there are only two places you can be. Either you're on the train or you're not. And then if you're on the train, you might not have all the answers. You might have to tread carefully. You might sometimes need to take 2 steps forward and 1 step back. But you need to be on the momentum into the future if you believe it. And it takes some courage. In particular, I think if you're doing quarterly, if you have an unlucky quarterly, I do believe that how to stay the track will be incredibly important for people.
Addressing climate change isn't easy, and businesses may not be able to do it themselves. In fact, research out of Harvard Business School by Professor Peter Tufano suggests that alliances are the way to go. What do you think?
Well, it's interesting because it is a game changer, addressing climate change and making sure your company prosper from it. We put down 5 principles, which we call Action Speaks, and the product of that becomes a platform for sharing, basically. But the idea is simple. First of all, this is not a time for overthinking things, it's a time of action. Secondly, it's a time for speed, because the clock speed of this crisis is not something we set ourselves. We need to adapt and catch up. It is a time to act on what provides impact, so you can do symbolic changes. That can be important for inspiration, but all of us need to understand the true impact of our business and address it. And finally, it's about collaboration, because I don't think any industry today could resolve all of it, meaning reaching to start with the 50% reduction until 2030. Very few can do that unless you have new ways to collaborate, and that might be with partners up and downstream, might be with competitors or like-minded companies. And definitely more and more so, it's about collaboration with governments in order to make sure we understand the impact of transitioning together and get help along the way. And that's why World Economic Climate Alliance, with 130 companies, among the biggest and I would say most successful companies in the world, where all are committed to Paris, all are progressing in climate and business. We are now coming together to see how we can meet up together with government leaders of the world to make this happen even faster.
I was wondering if you think that some of what you've been able to achieve, if it has anything to do with the fact that 2 years into being CEO, you had asked your country retail managers to also take on the title of CSO. Can you explain what you did and tell us if you think that's had big impact?
Well, I think so. I like to believe that. I think people in IKEA are in generally interested in people and planet topics, and they are believers and excited about it. What we realized was that we need to put the leadership on the top, and we also need to educate ourselves, because some of these topics are highly technical. So in order to, as we spoke about before, in order to make sure you make the right decisions, not only symbolic, but also to get an impact, you actually need to educate yourself a little bit. Therefore, we think from a competence perspective today, we have shifted our view on when we're recruiting people and leaders, which relates back to Harvard and your peers out there. So today we advocate for that all universities integrate climate knowledge and also digital knowledge into all programs, whether it's business or engineering programs, because We don't see it any longer as a niche competence. In order to be a CFO today in IKEA, you need to understand climate. In order to be an engineer, you need to understand climate. In order to be a CEO in a market, you need to understand climate. It's so integrated in the model.
So you are changing how you hire.
And we're changing how we train our leaders as well. So all our top leaders have been through programs when it comes to sustainability and climate in particular.
When it comes to business schools, what can they be doing differently when it comes to teaching their MBAs?
Yeah, I think I have a very strong view on that. We need to speed up the integration of climate science and climate economics into all programs. So when I hire today, I meet too many economists coming out of school who don't have a clue about the transformation that we stand in. So we need to start by educating them. And the models that they have been taught, to a certain degree, can be a bit outdated, which is understandable because the climate transformation is happening as we speak. But what we see is no longer a niche topic. The companies that are successful today cannot have a staff of sustainability experts. They need to have economists and engineers that deeply understand the cockpit of a climate smart economy. And that requires, I think, a look at the different programs. So would you ever be interested in Harvard to discuss that? We would love to explain and go deeper.
You've had early experience as a leader in Pakistan. I understand you were the youngest ever country leader at the age of 25. For business leaders who don't understand what that might be like, can you explain why that helped shape your opinion about how you conduct business today?
Well, the true story is that I found out 1 year into my assignment, I was the only one who applied for the job. So that's, one of the reasons. But I do believe we try to actually find a way in IKEA also to go back to allow people with a lot of willingness, a little bit less experience to take on great assignments.
And I understand you play music.
I do.
What do you play?
I'm a rocker, so I like rock, and I do play. I've been playing in several bands throughout the years, but I also play a lot. It's like my time alone. So my yoga is to take the guitar, tune it up loud, and I hope nobody listens.
If you could whisper in the ear of any one person to convince them that it's time to take action on sustainability, who would it be?
I think the most important is to speak to the young, because today there is far too few of the young who have hope in the future of this, and actually far too few of them who know all the good things that are happening, because the best companies out there are typically quite silent. They don't want to boast or brag, and they also try to avoid the risk of being accused of greenwashing, which is almost a societal issue today, because people, I think, deserve to know both about the challenges but also about the great progress that is happening, which is one of the reasons that we are doing Action Speaks. It is about sharing peer-to-peer great examples of impactful climate economics, but it's also to give people an opportunity to see that there's a lot of things happening.
Thank you very much for your time, Jesper.
Thank you.
It was a pleasure speaking with you.
Thank you.
Thank you.